Hi, welcome back to the course. In this chapter, we're going to look at the Italian with A5, and that's a bunch of systems that I grouped together because there's lots of transpositions and the ideas are often similar. So they are, for me, part of one big family, but it's going to be a long journey. So fasten your seatbelts until the fasten your seatbelt sign is switched off. E4, E5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6, d3, bishop c5, c3, d6, castle, rook e1, a5. A5 first is also possible, and h6 first as well. It just should transpose, as black has to castle after we play rook e1 anyway. Rook e1 is also always the move we want to be playing in Italian, also against the a6 systems, so nothing new there. Just a few words about a5, what it's all about. Compared to a6, black also gives the room for the bishop to drop back, but there are a few major differences. First of all, a6 threatens knight a5, hitting the bishop, and that's why, as you know, we play a4 here, so that after knight a5, the bishop can drop back. a5 does not have that create that threat, so we don't have to play a4, and we will not play a4. It does prevent queenside expansion with b4. So compared to a6, black grabs more space. The downside could be that the b5 square is weakened, so very often, as we will see, after bishop e6, we have this bishop b5 retreat. In fact, it's not a retreat, it's just it's a move forward, but it is avoiding the trade of the bishops. So I would mostly say it's a trade-off, really, a5. It's a trade-off between grabbing space, which is a good thing, and not gaining a tempo, which is a bad thing, because a6 basically gains like a tempo in some way. We look at a5 here, but also after h6. So first, let's see what happens after h6, h3, a5. Well, this will look under a5, h3, h6. More h6, h3, bishop b6 is possible, and only after knight b2, a5. The point is that we actually do not want to play knight b2 after a5. As you will see, we are going to play d4. So bishop b6, knight b2, a5 is trying to sort of move order us. I propose a simple approach here. Just play knight f1. Knight is heading towards g3, perhaps. Bishop e6, and now just take. Bishop b5 is possible. That's critical, but after knight e7. d4, e d4, knight takes d4, bishop d7. Bishop d7, queen takes d7. Knight g3 position is also pleasant for white, but black can manage to equalize with accurate play. I propose to simply take bishop e6, f8, bishop e3. We did waste some time with the knight going to d2 and f1 before offering trade of bishops, but black also wasted a move on bishop b6 back and also h6. It's not clear if it's such an important tempo. So we have some sort of a version of this position, bishop e3, rook e3, and here our knight is most likely going to head towards g3. If black plays slow with queen d7, we play knight g3, and we will likely go d4. I like that our pawn is on a2 here, not on a4, and we can play a3 guarding this b4 square. Which is nice. Often you get these positions when pawn is already on a4. For example, in the a6 variations, when black later plays a5. So here, I think the fact that our pawn is on a2 is beneficial. We can play a3, d4, and it's a common theme to undouble these e-pawns, but then e6 is still weak, and we have a strong center and the c-file to put pressure along. So life's good here, I believe. 13 d5 is very critical. It is possible to let this stay on d5, make a move, knight g3, let's say, and it would be normal as well, but I believe here e takes d5 works quite well. We're forcing knight takes d5 pretty much, because ed hangs a pawn on e5. Now we play rook e4, knight f4, and here knight e1. So we are very passive with our knights here, but black has these huge weaknesses, doubled isolated pawns, e6, e5. And I think as long as we get to stabilize, we will, in the long run, enjoy a positional advantage. So let's see how exactly that works. We have to be quite accurate. If queen d7, queen c2, Very, very important. We bring the rook over to d1, guarding the d3 pawn. And if rook f7, king h2, another useful move. Sometimes we might want to push g3, but we have to be, of course, careful here. Queen d7, rook c1. Now it's important not to play here queen c2. Also, I should mention that after rook f7, we should not play queen c2 now because of queen to g5. So that's why we play queen c2 after queen d7 and not after rook f7. Rook f7, king h2, queen d7, and now rook c1, because now if we play queen c2, there's some issue after rook f8. If rook d1, there is a tactic knight takes h3. So black is of course trying to muddy the waters. Situation is positionally not good for him, as he has got this horrible doubled pawns. So he's trying to confuse us with all sorts of tricks, and we have to not fall for them. So here I propose rook c1. Again, you don't have to remember this. You can just sort of calculate it behind the board. This is not a... if you had seen this idea before, it's not something you cannot find. So you should be capable of that. Rook c1 first. And now if rook d8, queen a4 is strong. Now knight d3 is not possible because of rook d1. Important finesse. And if rook a8, rook c2. Very, very solid, covering the f2 pawn. I imagine if necessary, even rook d2 is possible. And our f1 knight will slowly get activated by e3 to g4 or c4, and we will start putting pressure on the weak e5 pawn. So I believe this is a very promising position. If we handle the first few moves right, stop the counterplay, then I think in the long run we have quite some advantages. And that's for this bishop, but this is very rare. Bishop b6, a5 is just... I just included it to be sure we are not getting move ordered, but actually it's just never really happening. Bishop b6, h3, a5 transposes to a5, h3, bishop b6, also very, very rare. So let's look at 7a5, h3. We don't need to play h3 here to stop knight g4, so in that sense we can play knight d2. In systems with a5, bishop still being on c5, this knight g4, king h8 doesn't quite work. But the reason we play h3 is, in fact, because we want to keep the knight on b1 and we want to be able to push d4 after h3, h6, which is our main idea. Instead of h6, black has a few moves here. Bishop e6 is very fashionable. It's possible to take here as well, take bishop e3, then after takes rook e3, d5. There was a game between Aronian and Van Foreest, and black got a pretty good position there. So I propose more ambitious bishop b5. Though I have to say the lines get very, very complex, very murky. So if you feel like having an easy day, you can do this, and then knight d2, d4. Rook e1 takes queen d3, queen b3. We've seen something similar in a6 variation. In the a6 chapter with early bishop e6 there. But here, yeah, it's quite similar. But black has a bit of a better version, so he should be able to equalize. But this is definitely possible. Bishop b5, move 9, much more principled than the main move. Now again, black has a wide variety of options. Knight e7 is a bit early, but Lev once played against Kramnik. I think he mixed up the order. Now white goes d4. Now there are two different moves, bishop b6 and bishop a7. The differences are there. With bishop b6 we go bishop d3. It's an idea, common idea, not to rush with knight d2, and first develop the bishop before the knight. So that is applied here. Knight g6, bishop e3. If d5 we go d5, d4, ef6. Queen d3, queen d3, e3, bishop b6, cb, a lot of trades, fg, king g7, knight b2. After the trades, the material is equal, but we have a positional advantage. The d3 pawn is weak in the endgame, and it's not that weak, but it's also really not going anywhere. So it is probably more a weakness than a strength, is how I would classify it. 12 d5 is not great. 12 h6, knight b2. Now it's not necessary to reroute the knight to g3. We can also play with the knight on d2. The thing is, if the bishop were on c1, we would need to move the knight out of the way. But now that the bishop is already on e3, we can just enjoy the placement of pieces as they are, and perhaps play queen c2, maybe a4, maybe knight c4. White is just slightly better, enjoying a strong pawn center. And if d4, bishop a7, move 10, bishop d3, knight g6. Now, if bishop e3, which is not what I recommend, there is the issue of d5. And remember, with the bishop on b6, we had d5, d4, and then at the end of the line, we took on b6, doubling the pawns. So that is not happening with bishop on a7. That's why after bishop d3, knight g6 here, I propose a very funky idea of the engine, bishop g5. 12a4 is also very good. The idea is that we are waiting for h6, then we play bishop e3, so you will see there is a big difference. And if rook e8, then knight d2 is good, knight h5, knight f1. Commonly, the combination of knight h5 and rook e8 is not very good. I've mentioned it in another chapter as well. The thing is that after knight f4, knight g3 takes, the f5 push is hindered as the rook is on e8, and it should be on f8. And at the same time, rook on e8 only makes sense if you put pressure here. So either rook e8, knight f6, or rook f8, knight h5 is the combination of the right moves. So a4 is actually pretty good, but the engine, I really like this crazy idea, bishop g5, h6, and now bishop e3 back. h6 is almost always useful, but in this rare case, it's not. After d5, we have knight takes e5, d4, knight takes g6, and now there is no h takes g6. This is the point. Fg, bishop c2, and e4 pawn is very weak, knight d2 is coming. And if black doesn't play d5, but goes 13 rook e8, we go knight bd2, and we have this perfect setup. Black is too late to push d5, and he just doesn't have any counterplay against our strong pawn center. And we don't have to rush it, we just bring the queen out, maybe push the pawn up the board, or even like that. I mean, it's really a lot of space for creativity. I'm just drawing arrows without even thinking too much about it, just easy play here. Knight bishop b6 is also possible, and this is, again, specifically against us, trying to confuse us with move order. If knight bd2, h6, somehow we got move ordered into something we don't really want. We go d4. We will play d4 also in the other lines. Bishop d7, moving out of d5. Sorry, we don't play d5, of course. We just moved out of d5. In general, you don't want to play d5, opening this bishop for no real reason, unless it wins some material. Oh, instead of bishop d7, I should mention also edcd and d5. This is a common idea. After d5, e5, and knight e4, the normal move here is knight c3. But then after f5, ef6, queen f6, somehow black is equalizing. After takes, and bishop d5. He is able to equalize here eventually, even though he's a pawn down at the moment. But the engine suggests a brilliant move, queen a4. Basically, he's aiming against f6 at all cost. Usually, it is not a move you want to have in your system, let's say, and I think 9 out of 10 times is not good. Like with knight on b1 and bishop on c1, you should not develop the queen, but in this particular case, it's the best move. So I would say just forget it maybe, but because the chances you get this position is not very high, but yeah. In any case, queen a4 here is the best move. The idea is that if f6, you can take on c6, b6, queen c6, and black doesn't have enough compensation for the pawn. And if knight e7 now, it's very instructive. We play knight c3, bishop f5. Now there is no counterplay against the d4 pawn with the knight gone from c6, and now after bishop f5, very instructive, it's just queen d1 back. So the queen on a4 was just serving the purpose of stopping f6, and now that the knight is on e7, f6 is no longer good. We play bishop d3, challenging the e4 knight, and we have a better position. So this is a very rare case of queen a4 being strong. 10 bishop d7 is more neutral, less risky than ed4, not giving up the center, and these positions we will see plenty of. Bishop a4, rook e8, bishop c2. We will see many such positions. This is our common idea. You might have seen in the a6, a5 chapter when our pawn was on a4, bishop on c4, in similar position. We went bishop b3, bishop c2. And here we do bishop a4, bishop c2, and we intend to develop then either with bishop e3, knight d2, or but that always implies ed bishop d4 because the pawn is hanging, or sometimes knight a3. Let's see here what happens after 12 bishop c2, e4, c4, knight b4. We give up this c2 bishop always for the center. I really discussed this a lot in the chapter with a6, a5, the chapter with where we look at this position. And then bishop a7 or bishop b6 and bishop b3. Like we looked at that there. So this is very similar. These two chapters are sister chapters. Yeah, d3, knight before knight c3, knight c2, queen c2, h6. Here e5 is very strong. And this is a rare case because the bishop on d7 blocks the ed knight d5. So black doesn't have a good retreat. Knight h7, and the bishop e3. Yeah, the knight on h7 is very weird. We bring the rook to d1, then knight from c3 goes towards the king side with knight e2, knight g3, and we'll start our offensive as the e5 pawn combined with the bishop, the knight, and later the queen. We'll come up with a way to create quite some threats. h6 is the well, it's a waiting move. We can get this position also from another move order: 8 h6, d4, bishop b6, bishop b3, rook e8, bishop e2, bishop d7. So it's these positions, they not only look similar, but sometimes they also transpose. Yeah, here we play a3. We can also play bishop e3, but we should not play a4. After a4, rook c8. Very strong waiting move. Black's waiting for knight a3. And then ed4, and we don't have the knight b5 tempo as the bishop is not on a7. So with bishop on b6, we don't do this a4 move. We can play bishop e3, then after ed, bishop d4, knight d4, c d4. We have a nice position with queen d3 and e5 incoming, but black has a strong defense. a4, that is. If c5, we have e5, knight h5, knight c3, cd, knight d5. Very nice. We'll regain the pawn on d4, and we have much better piece coordination here than black. That's why he goes a4 first, a3, and now c5. Now, after e5, knight h5, if you go knight c3, cd, knight d5, that would be bishop a5 move. So a4, a3 was very clever inclusion by black. Now we just take dc5, bishop c5, knight c3. And black has to be accurate here to equalize bishop c6, queen d3, g6, e6, very scary. And now rook e6, knight f4. Nice tactic, just in time. We still take on g6, rook g6, knight g6, and play knight e4. And optically, I like white. We have a bit of a safer king. But the engine defends very well and says black is fine here. Therefore, bishop e3 is... I still believe it's very good, practically speaking, but black can equalize. So I give also the option of 13 a3. So the idea is that we prevent a knight b4 business. And we ask black what is his move. So he has a lot of moves. Let's say rook c8. This is not accurate here. The point is to go bishop e3. If ed, cd, knight e4, we have d5. And the thing is, we always had d5 after knight e4, but if we had gone ed, cd without a3, the problem would not be knight e4 because of d5, but the problem would be knight b4. And after knight c3, knight c2, queen c2, black has knight takes e4, bishop f5, and d5. So he's got this tactic. So by playing a3, you created the sneaky threat of bishop e3, ed, cd. And yeah, this is a disaster, knight coming to c3, and if not, knight coming to d2 here. So 14 d5 is the move I checked. It's a good attempt to try to somehow still create some counterplay in the center. Now we go knight e5 d, bishop e3, rook e3. ef wins the pawn, but rook e3 is nice. Rook e5 and f4. If a rook moves back, we go e5, we crush. So black has to second exchange. We take d, knight d2. And I don't think black has enough for the exchange here after all. As yeah, the rook is worth 5. Piece 3, pawn 1. And also there isn't enough activity. That is for rook c8. Rook a6 is actually clever, but it's No chance anybody makes it. a4 and now rook a8 back. And we see this position in another variation, which is completely insane, because here black lost 2 tempi, or we lost 1 with that, and there, in the other position we went a4 in one go, while black went bishop a7, bishop b6, losing only 1 tempo. So somehow it comes down to the same thing. It's in 9 bishop a7 variation, but it's completely crazy. I just mentioned it because it exists. Queen b8 is logical, bringing the queen to a7. Now I really like the solution here, very strong. a4. Queen d8 again transposes to the same thing I mentioned after rook a6, rook a8. But if e d c d queen a7, we have a very strong idea. Bishop e3, protecting d4 pawn, knight e4, and simply knight c3. And the queen on a7 suddenly does very little, as our d4 pawn is well protected. The queen is just completely out of play, and after takes, or knight f6 back, queen d2, we are going to take the king one-on-one. And I think the engines were saying it's still okay, but I would like to see how human would defend this position. Just very, very dangerous. Queen b8, queen a7, not very good. Theory in g5 actually is most principled, and it's a common idea in this chapter, as you will see, surprisingly. Knight d2. Here we have a tempo on the b6 bishop, so that's why with the bishop on a7 we don't do this a3 because of g5. Now after g4 we take and we'll go knight c4. It's like very important tempo. Bishop a7 and now knight a3. These positions are very subtle, of course. That said, imagine your opponent goes bishop a7. I always like to point out these things. We go d4, he goes bishop d7, bishop a4, h6, bishop c2, rook e8. And now let's say you confuse everything and go a3. I don't think the chances are that high that your opponent will punish you with g5. So all these subtleties, it's good to remember them, but if you don't, I also don't think the opponent will be able to exploit it. But what you will always have is a strong pawn center. That's what I like about it. I tell that from personal experience, because this idea I did get to use, fortunately, a few times in some important blitz games. And my opponents, I of course I didn't remember where I play what. I would just play bishop a4, bishop c2. Then I would make some random move, a4 or a3 or whatever. And my opponents, they just wouldn't know what to do. They would play some bad moves like queen e7, or they play ed at the wrong moment. It's simply very, very hard for black to play because he's facing this strong center and he doesn't know what to do. So I believe the setup is sort of just it's just dangerous in general from a human point of view, and all the subtleties are nice to know and good to remember, but it's not even crucial so much because black in a practical game is very rarely managing to set up all these counterplay ideas like g5. I mean, this is just, yeah, but okay, anyway, g5, knight d2, g4, take, knight c4 here, bishop a7, knight e3. A few moves. If e d c d, queen f6, we play knight d5, queen g7, and bishop e3. Very nice. We're happy to give up the bishop. If knight e3, fe3, the d4 pawn is super well protected, and the bishop is staring into nothingness here. Likewise, after king h8, queen d2. C7 pawn we shouldn't capture. We have to take it a little bit easy because black has some ideas, like rook g8, we have knight f4. And now we are defended against all the threats. And if knight e3, we have, of course, fe3. And again, this d4 pawn is just like a rock against the a7 bishop. Queen f6 first, we have rook f1. We should not get seduced by this pawn on c7 because after ed, very, very unclear things are happening. So we go rook f1. If ed here, we go knight d4. Knight e3, bishop e3. Knight e5, queen h5, bring the queen sort of to defense, also to attack, and ready to develop the rook from a1. Knight g4, bishop d2, king h8, rook a d1, rook e5, knight f5. Rook g8, we have bishop f4, and if queen g6, which is a very solid move, we could just take, knight d4, and get a decent endgame. I don't think this was anything special for white, but yeah, the sequence of moves by black was very strong. If king h8 here, knight d5, queen g7. Again, knight c7 is dangerous. We play g3, ed, and king g2. We reverse the king safety factor. We give up the pawn on d4, but now the king is on g2. After eventual rook h1, of course, we have to make sure it works. But after eventual rook h1, our black king will feel the heat, and our king actually is surprisingly safe. So in these g5, g4 systems, actually in many different Italians, it looks as though black is attacking until he's not, and then white's attacking. Yeah, believe it or not, we covered this 9 bishop b6 move. 9 bishop a7 is also there. We go d4, bishop d7, bishop a4. Similar thing. If rook e8, bishop c2, h6 is the same as h6, bishop c2, rook e8. h6, bishop c2, eu g5 here, which is very principled. We react with knight a3, king h8, moving away and intending some business here on the g file, knight b5. We're very often after this bishop here. As I mentioned across this course a few times, the combination of g4 and the bishop on a7 is very dangerous, because after a g, knight g4, there is an x-ray on our f2 pawn. So we do want to neutralize this a7, this dark square bishop. It's very important to minimize the effect of black's kingside play. Bishop b6, knight d2. This is one way. Another way is to go c4, total mess. After c4, g4, c5, dc, de, it becomes complete chaos. c4 is there, but knight d2 is the main move. Knight b4 is strong. Otherwise, knight c4 would be really bad news for the bishop on b6. Without the bishop, black has no attack. Knight b4, very strong. If cb, then of course bishop takes b5. a4, another strong move. Just protecting the knight. Knight c2, queen c2. Now we intend knight c4, and black, it's a very strong idea, bishop e6. He has to know all this. I mean, if he doesn't do knight b4 or he doesn't do bishop e6, he will just be worse. Knight c4 will take. So I believe a very good try if your opponent is unprepared. Even if he's prepared, it's okay. But if he's unprepared, you're simply going to get a likely easy game after knight c4 at some point. Bishop e6 is very strong. d5, and now bishop back. This is incredibly resourceful. Bishop c8 even is possible. They're very clever. The point is that after knight c4, bishop c5, bishop e3. It was c6 somewhere. That was the extra option. Let me just see exactly where that manifests itself. Yeah, that manifests itself here. So after bishop c8, knight c4, bishop c5, we have to play bishop e3, because if you go rook b1, c6 is there, as the d6 pawn is guarded by the queen. So bishop c8 is certainly a clever move. If we go bishop e3 here, bishop e3, knight e3, g4, ag, knight takes g4 is normal. Knight c6 is also possible, including c6, knight e3, and now knight g4. Now I play queen d2. Queen h4 is there. Here there is a very nice forced line. I'll just give it to you. Knight takes g4, bishop g4, dc, rook g8, cb, rook ab8. I just was clicking it with the engine and continued the line far too long. I wanted to see what happens. Actually, quite interesting things happen. Rook e3, guarding the third rank. Rook g5, very strong. Queen d6, rook takes b7. The way the computer combines kingside play with taking care of our assets, like the b pawn, for example, that's just very remarkable. Like rook g5 and then rook b7, like it's all very accurate. But okay, queen f6, king h7, knight b5, bishop h3, queen takes g5, very strong. Queen takes g5, rook h3, and now the computer says this is equal, but well, we are more equal here than our opponents, because the with rook and knight against the queen, we can always set up a fortress if something goes wrong, but if something goes right, we are going to win the game here as well. So the attack is gone with all the pieces gone, and the queen alone can do us little damage. Black has to be quite accurate here to survive. This 24 queen h4, 24 king h7 is more normal. Knight ac4 coming back into the game, rook g8 and g3. King is secured, and the d6 pawn is quite soft. Black has to be Black has to play very well to survive. If 22 knight g4, more normal without c6, we play queen d2 as well. King h7, excuse me, and now f3. knight e3, rook e3, and it's important that after rook g8 we go f4. We clear the third rank, stop any attack, and after rook f1 and mobilization, it once again becomes a question which side is attacking. As the black king, we will get to him sooner or later. These are important variations, very important variations. 18 bishop d7 is a more normal move. Now we go knight c4, bishop c5 and rook b1. c6 is not possible because g6 is hanging. So g4, b4, bishop a7, knight a7, gh. Yeah, the engine is setting up quite some attack by black, but we have strong resources as well. Queen d2. We don't have the time to bring the knight back. If knight g4, f3 just wins. There's nothing happening to us. So rook g8, queen takes h7, knight h7, simply g3. And king suddenly very safe, as the knight on h7 is very passive. And if rook a7, ba, it's a nice move. Our king will be pretty secure. And we have some assets here on the queen side. The rook on a7 might get hit by the bishop on e3. b7 pawn is in trouble. Things really went our way. I believe objectively the lines after bishop c8 looked more okay for black than bishop d7. There is for g5, I believe. b5 is there, trying to gain some space on the queen side at least. Certainly playable. Now I like the move a4. We are just cutting through the queen side pawns and creating all these weaknesses, fixing the a5 pawn and gaining these light squares. Bishop e3 I like here. Intending knight b2 next. White has a pleasant position here. b5 is, yeah, I always like to meet it with a4. If rook e8, a4. As I mentioned, a3, g5 here is a good version for black. So we go a4. Now g5, we go knight a3. g4, we can take, and bishop e3. Common idea, knight e3, fe3. And again, the bishop on a7 becomes totally dead as he's staring at the d4 pawn. It's protected by these two pawns. And next we want to play king f2, rook h1, and completely reverse the situation with the king safety. Typical case of the g5, g4 going wrong for black. e4, cd4, knight b4 certainly possible here as well. Knight c3, knight c2, queen c2, c6. Black is preparing d5, e5, knight e4. And here we see one more way of how sometimes white deals with it. We've seen a lot of it in the a4, a5, a6, a4, a5 chapter. In fact, the position is very similar. I believe that one was with the bishop on c8, but here with bishop is on d7. We go bishop d2 here. Interesting idea. If d5, e5, knight e4, we take knight e4, bishop f5, and there is a nice intermezzo, bishop takes a5. If queen a5, we have knight f6. And there is no more queen takes f6. So one more idea to keep in our arsenal. And if bishop b6, black plays slowly, we go rook ac1. Protecting the queen, very important, as you might realize after d5, e5, knight e4, bishop f5, we have now knight f6. And if queen f6, ef, the rook is protecting the queen. And that's for ed here. Bishop b6. Yeah, this is a decent waiting move. Unlikely black will play this way, but it's possible. Now we go bishop e3. We have the extra a4 tempo, so ed, bishop d4, knight d4, cd. Next we want to play e5 and queen d3. For example, c5, e5, knight h5. Here we have a lot of options. We can play knight c3, cd, knight d5. We can start with queen d3, but I like this d5 move. I think it's very, very testing. If d5, knight a3, we dominate light squares. Black's pieces are really, really poor. Knight on h5 is a bit weird. Bishop on b6 especially is a bad piece. c4 is the best, trying to somehow open up the bishop. Knight a3, rook c8, queen d2. And here, if black is out of book here, he will really struggle finding the right solution. It's really difficult to find a way to play actually for black. And the only way to go is d5, knight e5, and now bishop takes h3. Completely out of nowhere, I believe. Very difficult to sacrifice. Knight ac4, strong reply. Gh queen h4 is surprisingly dangerous, so we go knight ac4. And here, the following combination is very hard to find, I believe. Queen h4, knight b6, and now bishop takes g2, only move. King g2, knight f4. Queen takes f4, queen takes f4, knight c8. And even here we are up. Well, right now we are up material. If black takes a knight, we still will be having rook, bishop, and the knight against the queen, which is more than enough. So it is black here who has to try and find a perpetual check somewhere. It is there somewhere, but it's still not easy. And most of all, I'm not sure he will be able to find all these resources. And even if he does, for our next games, we can choose another move here. You can investigate queen d3 or knight c3. Very, very challenging. For example, queen d3, g6, d5, another version of these things. This for bishop b6. We looked at g5 and ed, so it's time to look at theory in rook c8. Here it's decent, and now if bishop e3, ed, cd is not possible because of knight b4. So when the pawn was on a3, bishop on b6, we could have done it, but now knight b4 is there. So here we go knight a3. With bishop on a7, this works. ed, we have knight b5. This is the idea. Black has a few options. If he plays d3, which is very clever, we take queen takes d3, bishop b6, and you can just go queen d1 back. Similar is of course bishop d3, bishop c2. Well, not similar, exactly the same. But we take with the queen and then we go back to d1, moving out of knight e5. If knight e5, then bishop f4. And yeah, we have a little bit more space in the center and a pleasant position here, I believe. And d3 also a very unusual move. If bishop b6, now we just take cd4, knight b4, bishop b1. If d5, e5, knight e4, we can play knight c3. The knight made quite a journey, but came back to where it belongs, and we have a fantastic play here. Great prospects on the king side with this e5 pawn and all the bishops facing the king. dc3 is the most natural, grabbing the pawn. Now we go knight a7. If he goes knight a7, we go bc. Rook a3 is also cool, by the way, extra option. I like bc. Knight c6. I also mentioned that 17 bishop c6 can be met by knight d2. It looks modest, but can be very effective as after c4, rook a3, bishop b2, rook g3 will set up very dangerous attack. Knight c6 back is possible, rook a3, knight e5, and now also knight d2. Modest, but very efficient. Black cannot enjoy his extra pawn. It's not really felt, and our kingside play is looking very, very dangerous. I believe, practically speaking, white is definitely for choice. If black takes one more pawn with 16 cb2, we take bishop b2, knight a7, and rook a3, and it's a fantastic position for white to play. We are going to remove the f3 knight, either just remove it or even push e5 and then take on e5 with the knight and then swing the rook across to g3. These two bishops are monsters, especially this dark bishop, dark square bishop that's unopposed. I love this position. I think this knight a3, knight b5 is a fantastic idea. Wasn't easy to find, by the way. The engine doesn't give white an advantage here. You see, assesses this as like equal at first, even slightly in black's favor, then realizes it's equal objectively. So it wasn't easy to find. I was struggling here with cd, knight b4. Then also I tried knight takes d4, which is knight takes d4 is decent, by the way. But after d5, like I even actually give knight d4. So let me mention it as an extra idea. Knight d4, d5, knight d6, bishop e6, e5. It's a good try as well. Knight e4, bishop e3. Because if bishop e3, rook e3, rook e5, we have f3. We win the piece on the pin. Queen g5, queen d4. But queen g5 right away, queen d4, and now very strong sequence f5. Point is that if f3, black goes f4, rook e1, and rook e5, sacrificing a piece. It leads to some kind of a forced draw. can't really see which one at all. But probably you can find it if you want with one click. Switching on the engine, but I recommend 21 ef6, queen f6, bishop e4, simple endgame, queen d4 cd, rook e4, rook e4 de, knight c4, and white has a comfortable endgame. To be fair, black should be able to defend with accurate play. That's for knight d4, but of course knight b5 is much cooler. I was very happy with this idea. It also fits in well with the spirit of the course. I believe this covers 8 bishop e6. You have to make sure that it does, because there are lots of similar options. But yeah, bishop e6 is covered. Now let's look at bishop a7. This is an interesting move order. I think Grishuk played it once. Black is trying to somehow confuse us. As against bishop e6, we went bishop b5, bishop a7, d4. Now it's a little different, but I'm going to try and transpose with bishop b3. h6, d4, now we transpose to h6, d4, bishop a7, bishop b3. I was very happy with that transposition. And if black doesn't go h6, which he should, we can go, let's say, bishop e6, or we go bishop c2 back. If black plays a neutral move like h6, we go d4, e4, knight d4 is good here. If cd, d5, e5, knight e4, knight c3, f5, black has a fantastic idea after ef, knight f2, king f2, knight d4. And he's able to somehow make these complications work for him. Knight d4 is more efficient. If d5, take on c6, bc, knight d2. d4, knight d4, knight d4, bishop e4, just slightly better because of the doubled c-pawns. Clean solution here. And if knight d4, c4, d5, then we go e5, knight e4, knight c3, f5. And here we don't have to take on f6, we just play knight e2. We should not go f3, by the way. Black has some insane idea. Queen h4, fe, and f4. This was crazy stuff, and black was okay. So we go knight e2. Knight is heading towards f4. Queen h4, black is trying to provoke some things, because we can play g3, and black goes back. Queen h3, we have knight f4, obviously. Queen goes back, knight f4. If g5, knight g7, queen g6, queen g7, we gain exchange, but black has some counterplay. We should be very accurate. f4 is very strong. Knight g3, king h2. And we've blocked the f-pawn, and we are going to take over the g-file. f4 very, very important. Otherwise, f4 was coming with devastating consequences. Bishop f7 is more normal, of course, not giving up an exchange. Now bishop e3, g5, knight d3. And this position is very interesting. It is quite random in the sense that it's not that likely you'll get it, I believe. We sort of went a particular path by black, which is not common, but still an interesting position and very instructive. If h5, we go h4, gh, king g2, and by splitting these pawns, we have created quite some weaknesses in black's camp, and his king is pretty weakened as rook h1 is coming. And then bishop e6, king h2. We play, and then we go rook g1. It's important to establish the king safety here for us, and to make sure that it's black's king that is in greater danger. That's for 10 h6. If bishop e6, bishop c2, d5 is more ambitious by black. If e d5, there are two moves. Queen d5, we just play bishop g5. Very unpleasant move to face. If knight moves to d7, then knight e3, another unpleasant move to face. And the queen suddenly stuck on d5. There are issues. Bishop e3 is coming. The queen has no good square to retreat to, as it can get hit by the knight from a3 as well. Queen d5 not fortunate. Knight d5 is better. If knight e5, there is a trick that we come across a few times in Italian. Knight e5, rook e5, bishop f2, king f2, queen f6. So I recommend knight bd2, putting pressure on e5, and it's difficult for black to protect it. If he goes f6, we have d4, and the bishop on e6 is vulnerable. So this is not working very well, this d5 idea. Knight e7, move 9 is possible. rerouting to g6. It's a little bit similar to bishop b6 knight e7 system, but here black lost tempo on a5 as well, so this is not really. But okay, it's a position. So let's look at it. D4, knight g6, knight d2. Yeah, we have to just bring the knight across. There is no time for bishop e3, knight d2, as the pawn is hanging still. So knight d2, rook e8, bishop c2. Black has a few options here. Grabbing space on the queen side is possible. We go a4, was like this move before, and now we exploit the weakness of the c4 square, knight c4, ed knight a5, nice intermediate move, dc, knight c6, cb, bishop b2, queen d7, knight a7. We lost the pawn in the process, but we gained a tremendous bishop and typical sacrifice for this variation, rook a7, just knight d4. We've seen such positions before, where we sacrifice a pawn for very strong initiative. Knight's heading towards f5. The bishop on b2 is an unopposed monster. 12 c6 is also mentioned, followed by d5. We go knight f1, d5, bishop g5. It's a typical reaction. D, rook e4. Such position exists in, at least I had seen it once in an anti-Berlin. I had a game against Andreikin, which was very, very similar, but here somehow white has a better version. Black cannot maintain the e5 pawn without allowing the bishop f6 gf, which would ruin his pawn structure. c6 d5 not working very well. Bishop d7, this developing a bishop and also intending to grab some space. Fair enough, knight f1. If a4, black can play bishop c6 here, and it's hard for us to make progress. We cannot play knight f1. We also cannot expand here. Let me make them red. Red. Okay, wait a second. Yeah, we can't really do that, so it's hard to make progress. So we go knight f1, we allow a4. d5 is also possible. We go de, de, ef, ef, rook e8, bishop e8, queen f3, bishop c6, strong move, queen f5, bishop d7, strong move, queen h5. We let him take, queen f6 and bishop e3. And we have a small advantage, bishop e3, knight e3, bishop c6, rook d1. We are a little better coordinated here, but not too much, I guess. But it is still something small. And d5 is decent, I have to say. Turn a4, more natural. Now we go knight g3, h6. h6 is always useful, bishop e3, and b5. Yeah, this is a common way to expand on the queen side, compensating a little bit for the fact that we have a strong center. Okay, b4, trying to neutralize the space black has on the queen side, ab, ab, bishop b6, b4. We've neutralized the queen side space. We have more space in the center. Black is happy to have traded the a pawn. Maybe he can trade down pair of rooks, but he still is on the defensive, as we have the upper hand in the center, a bit more space, a bit more active pieces. Some play here on the king side potentially. I believe we covered a bishop a7. Yeah, after bishop b3, because if h6, d4, we transpose to h6, d4, bishop a7. 8, bishop b6. It's another confusing attempt. So we looked at h6, bishop b6, a5, and this is also an attempt to confuse us. I tried bishop b3. Now if h6, d4, we transpose. But after bishop b3, he has bishop e6, bishop c2, h6. And now if d4, ed knight d4, with bishop on a7 after d5, we were slightly better. But here not, and that is manifesting itself in the following line. Yeah, if you remember well here, we were slightly better here because the bishop was on a7. With bishop on b6, much better placed. Black had just enough for equality. So this small nuance, although again black has to know this. I mean, I don't think after bishop b3 you will get you'll get in any trouble or anything. You can play bishop b3, but yeah, objectively speaking, knight b2 is more accurate. And h6 we looked at in another position where we went knight f1, bishop e6, take, bishop e3. That's looked at under 7 h6 move order, h3, bishop b6, knight e2, a5. And bishop e6 here is the other principled move, and now we just take again, take knight c4. We gain a tempo on the bishop. Bishop a7, bishop e3, trading the bishops. Bishop takes e3, and rook takes e3. And we have one of the versions of these positions. I believe it's a decent one. We want to push d4. We have a pawn on a2, meaning we haven't weakened the square, so we can play a3 later on after e-d-c-d, guarding the b4 square. If black expands on the queen side, this can actually also backfire. b5, knight d2, a4. These pawns are, as they're good, they are also quite weak, in fact. After d4, knight d7, knight f1. He cannot make much use of them. We will play queen e2, perhaps bring rook to c1. At some point we can touch him with b3 as well. And these, especially if knight comes to b6 towards c4, we can at some point hit him with b3. And yeah, the engine is not thrilled with these queenside pawns being advanced, and I believe, especially since the knight on c6 is kind of awkward with these two pawns. Like the c pawn is behind, not really connected to the other two. It seems as though these pawns are rather weak, and the position is not very comfortable for black. So here b5 is not great, and then the c4 knight is actually quite well positioned. Next up, it's time to look at 8h6 and d4, which is the main line, perhaps, and certainly main line when it comes to popularity. Knight bd2, by the way, it was my original intention to have knight d2 as the main move, but then I discovered that d4 is really interesting and it's much more fresh, so I decided to go for d4. But knight d2 is definitely interesting. The problem is that black has many different options. After bishop e6, bishop b5, he can play here all sorts of things. Knight e7, knight d7, knight h7, queen b8, and whatnot, actually. But the main move is queen b8, and I had a very cool idea here that I wanted to show you. And I've got to play it against Anton Guijarro, and I think I played it as well against Ding Liren, and also against the Russian player Antipov. But I didn't get to show my main idea, and I will show it here. Bishop c6, bc, d4, e-d-c-d. Now bishop b4 against Ding Liren, I grabbed the bishop. And I enjoyed my dark squares. Eventually the game was drawn, but I was better. There's sometimes some cool ideas. For example, maybe not right away, but the concept of b4, a, b3, bishop b2 is quite cool, I find. Getting the bishop on this diagonal with rook on e3 is especially, yeah, this is a very cool concept. The bishop b6 is main, and now my new idea here was a4. Incredible idea. I have to say I sort of peaked at the time I saw Computer mention it as one of the moves, and I thought, why a4? Weakening the b4 square and not contributing to development. Of course, at the time, people looked at knight f1, b3 perhaps, all the natural moves, queen c2 I believe Vishy played. But why a4? And then I realized, wow, the idea is to swing the rook across with rook a3. And as soon as I understood that, I was so fascinated. I started analyzing this, and it was just unbelievable, the stuff I saw. And the main trap, the one that nobody has fallen for yet, is d5. And I believe it's very natural to try and strike in the center before white gets to slowly create an attack with rook a3. d5 is actually not an accurate move at all, a bad move in fact, especially if it's played with the wrong idea. But I was hoping for this a lot. I actually won a nice game against David Anton Guijarro anyway, even though he didn't play d5, but still d5 I was really hoping for. e5, knight d7, and now rook a3. And it seems as though, well, in general, in these kind of structures, when black has d5, c6, we have e5, d4, black is usually either going for f6 or c5 break. Here c5 break seems extremely natural, and there is an incredible refutation. That's knight c4. d4, you think? d5, bishop f5. Black is up a full piece, but his bishop is locked up. Queen, rook are all here on the queen side. And we're just getting started. Knight h4, hitting the bishop, opening the third rank for the rook. Bishop d3, and now bishop takes h6. gh6, and now rook takes d3, just sacrificing everything. cd4, knight f5, and actually this is just checkmate. Black could defend a little bit better somewhere here, but it's already too late. Black is lost. I remember I analyzed all the variations to the end to be sure I win this if I get it. But the main line is beautiful. Like we just take everything, and this is just checkmate. There's just no way. I think it's like mate and 6 or something. There's just no way of stopping checkmate at all. Very beautiful line, and also already here white is much better, and here is just winning already at this point. So nice idea, but of course black has a few ways to improve here and there, and there are a lot of options, alternatives. So finally I decided d4 is going to be my main recommendation, but again I think there's no reason you shouldn't play knight bd2, and a little bit more self-study you could get there. The thing is, this chapter is already so huge, I thought there's no need to make it bigger. Knight d4, again 2 retreats, bishop b6 or bishop a7. Bishop b6, we go bishop b3, rook e2, bishop c2, bishop d7. Bishop d7 we already looked at, it transposed to the line we looked at via 8 bishop e6. So if ed, cd, knight b4 instead, knight c3, knight c2, queen c2. We've seen a lot of these positions. Let's look at this version. Now the pawn is on a2. We had seen it with pawn on a4 in a6, a5 chapter. If d5, we go e5, knight e4, bishop e3. Knight e4, bishop f5 works out for black. So we just go bishop e3, bishop f5, knight d2. We had seen this idea as well. We want to trade off this strong e4 knight. We're better here. If c6, preparing d5, e5, knight e4. And also note, if you go bishop e3, there is this knight takes e4 tactic. It's always there, and we should never blunder that. And if we go bishop elsewhere, then he tricks out with d5, e5, knight e4. And now if we go bishop e3, which is the best move, protecting this diagonal also against c5, then he gained the extra move on c6, which is not fair. Instead, I propose rook e2. We had seen in similar position move queen b1. Rook e2 serves the same purpose. If d5, e5, knight e4, bishop f5, we have knight f6. Queen f6, the queen is protected. So this is an idea to keep in mind. And if bishop e6, we go bishop e3. Bring the a1 rook into play, and also knight d2, f4 is an idea. Mainly we keep a strong pawn center, and we've prevented d5. d5, e5, knight e4, at least the good version of it. So white is just... white is practically better, at least. The computer sometimes plays these positions with black in very strange ways, starts to react to white's advances, but it's just very hard to play, I believe, and practically I would always take white here. If knight bishop a7, again bishop b3, g5 here is a bad version. We go knight e3, heading to b5. There is also g4, bishop h6. Nice trick to know. This is coming. Better to do it after rook e8, bishop c2, and now g5. Here we have a lot of options. There are not so many games in the base, but it's a very important position. Let's look at them one by one. If b5 expanding on the queen side, again a4 before bishop e3, standard reaction. If bishop a6, developing the bishop, knight d2, developing the knight. bc, bc, ed, and knight d4. If cd, knight b4 is not pleasant, as the pieces are coming to d3. So we go knight d4. And we are happy here with our e4 pawn being a strong central pawn. If bc, knight c3 is there. bc is less accurate. ed, cd, knight b4 is an issue. Knight c3, knight c2, queen c2, and knight e4 is working. Knight e4, bishop f5, bishop h6, queen e7, strong move. This is a strong sequence that works for black, so I propose knight takes c3. And trading everything makes sense. Ed knight d4, knight d4, bishop d4, bishop d4, queen d4, rook b8, b3, and we are still slightly better. The a pawn is a bit weak. We have a bit more space here. If rook b4, we have queen a7. Nice idea. If c5, trying to trap the queen, bring the rook to d1, rook b7, queen a6, rook b3, queen d3. Rook b4, queen d6. Also, instead of rook a d1, knight b5, I believe was possible. There are some variations there that can be investigated, but rook d1 is simple. Yeah, rook b7, queen a6, rook b3, queen d3, rook b4, queen d6, queen a6, rook d6, and we have a slightly more pleasant endgame. Knight on f6 is very badly placed, and the c5 and a5 pawns are weak. I mean, if the knight was somewhere on d4, black would be better, probably, but knight on f6 is out of play completely. And if the more modest and the more likely move, knight c6, we bring the rook to d1. Bishop e6, we go e5, knight d5, knight d5, cd, ed. We win a pawn, queen d6, queen a5, and black with accurate play can survive here, if I remember well. But we are up a pawn and have a free pressure here. That's for b5. Pretty decent, since this PC, this knight c2, knight d4 tactic is there. Decent way to play b5. g5 is exciting. Knight a3, g4, bishop h6. gf, queen f3 is good for white, king h7, bishop g5. King g6, queen g3. Black survives with knight h5, but after bishop d8, knight g3, bishop c7, we want way too many pawns. Knight h5, bishop d6. Just too many pawns. I mean, if we had black 3 maybe pawns, black would be okay, but we have 4. So 4 is a lot of pawns for a piece. Bishop h6, king h7 is the best move. If knight g5, there's king g6, our pieces are somehow stuck. Instead, we go bishop g5 back, rook g8, black insists on attacking as well, 8g, bishop g4, bishop h4. Very complicated lines. Rook g6, knight c4. If queen h8, intending rook a8, very inventive. We go knight e3, rook g8, g3. King f1 is also interesting, by the way, but I like g3, and ed, we go knight g4, knight g4, e5. It's very messy stuff, but as you see, as it transpires soon, we are successfully reversing the king safety situation. After d3, queen d3, bishop f2, king g2. Knight f2, queen f5, there is no dangerous discoveries. And bishop f2, king g2, bishop e1, ed6. Strong intermezzo. cd, rook e1. We have a much safer king now suddenly. King g7, knight d4, and lots of compensation for the exchange in form of a much safer king and much better pieces. It often happens, g3, king g2, and suddenly everything changes. Keep that in mind. Queen c8, again g3, bishop d4, very strong. cd, knight d4, rook e3. b5, knight d2. We protected from all the attack for now. Knight h5, another resource. Knight f4 is coming, very strong play by black here. All of course the engine stuff. Queen c1, knight f4, knight d4, ed, and now an incredible idea by computer just to give back a full rook to gain safety. That is queen e1, de, queen e3. We've given up a rook back, so now we have a bishop for the rook, but a much safer king. Knight h3, king h2, and now it's our turn to start attacking. Very instructive lines. Go over them carefully, please. I'm showing them a little too quickly, I feel, but me showing them more slowly will not make you remember them better. You have to do the move trainer here, or you have to be creative during the game and come up with these moves yourself. But again, the thing about these lines is that I'm really curious how black is going to find king h7, knight g5, king g6, for example. So all these, or how he's going to find bishop takes d4 and then knight h5 here. All these very, very strong moves that we assume black will make are also highly unlikely. Bishop d7 is transposing to 8 bishop e6. We looked at that there. d5 is a good attempt to try to fully equalize. I had to work here to find And I found an interesting idea. ED, queen d5, bishop b3, queen d6, queen has to protect the e5 pawn, and now knight a3, ed, knight b5. The knight is joining from the side, rook e1, queen e1. Now there are two options. If queen d7, we can play it most low a4. The queen is in the way of the bishop, so we just prevent a4. And it's not easy for black to find harmony in his position. If dc, we can take the bishop, knight e7, rook a7, queen c3. And I like our position. We will develop the bishop, bring the rook into the game. We have more than enough compensation for the pawn. If bishop b6, bishop f4, dc, bc is nice. We are down a pawn for now, but the c7 pawn is going to be lost, and rook d1 is coming. Queen d8, rook d1, bishop d7, and bishop e5. Lots of pins. Black has to be very accurate, not to lose material here, with all the pins for just the pawn. Queen d8 is more safe. Move 16. Now we take on a7. Bishop f4 also possible, just to play it more. Bishop b6, rook d1 to play it. Sorry, rook d1, play it more slow. I like to take the bishop, rook a7. The rook is misplaced now, and bishop f4. a4 is good to include for black. Bishop c4, and now dc or a3. a3 is very tempting. Now we go b4. I don't think a3 is actually very good. dc, rook d1, queen e7, queen takes e7, knight takes e7, rook d8, and even in the end game we have tremendous initiative. King h7, knight d4. Very hard for black to somehow defend. Bishop e5, bishop d3. It's all happening, and I think computer found some very, very narrow path to survive, but it was very difficult. So this is surprisingly cool. Even in the end game, we get to keep the initiative. 19 dc is more safe. Now rook d1, queen d7, queen e7, knight e7, rook d8 check, king h7, bc, and since both these pawns hanging, we regain material, and we are slightly better in the end. Bishop e6, bishop d3, bishop f5, take, bishop c7. We've regained the pawn. The rook is a little misplaced on a6, and black still has to be accurate to equalize this fully. Yeah, it's very cool pawn sacrifice. Knight a3, knight b5, I believe. So d5 doesn't fully equalize. Ed, cd, knight b4 right away. It's very natural here as well. Knight c3, knight c2, queen c2. d5 here, not great. e5, knight e4, knight e4, bishop f5. We have knight f6, queen f6, queen c7. We've seen this also in the a6, a5 chapter. We won a pawn. 14 c6 is a useful move. And here we have lots of moves, but I like the waiting a3. We're anticipating d5 a little bit. And also we are anticipating b5, b4, in fact. Because with the pawn on a2 and not on a4, this becomes an idea. So a3 is a nice move. If b5, now we have e5. If knight d5, knight e4, or after d, knight e5, knight e4, there is no knight before knight d3. So that's another point behind a3. If bishop e6, just developing, we go bishop e3, also just developing. If b5, knight d2 is simple. We want to get the square covered. As black plays on the queen side, we want to give him some attention, and we want to also reroute this knight. We could also do it right here, actually. Knight e2, knight g3 was also possible. Knight d2 is more with the idea of pushing the f-pawn forward. I believe with such strong control in the center, such strong pawn center, we are quite happy here as white. 16 d5 is possible. We go e5, knight e4, knight takes e4. With bishop already on e3, actually, this is quite strange, because after bishop f5, we have knight fd2, de, now rook a d1, very nice. Not rushing with taking, we might take it. We might also play knight c4 to d6. And if bishop d4, we have knight b3. We win material. c5 is met by knight c5. The bishop is just hanging here. So yeah, d5 after bishop e3 is a bit strange. But note that we played bishop e3 only when bishop is on e6, because there is of course this knight takes e4 tactic that we should be avoiding. So yeah, I should have mentioned here bishop e3, of course, only with bishop on e6. And if queen d7, then knight d2, overprotecting the e4 square. If bishop f5, you have queen d1. On knight e4 is less appealing, as knights are both ready to fight for that square. And if knight h7, then f4, bishop f5, queen d1, f6, knight f3. We have lots of space in the center and the king side, and we can bring the knight via e2 to g3, or play king h2, and maybe one day we'll push g4. We don't have to rush with g4, but maybe one day we'll push g4 and set our majority to motion. In any case, I believe white has much easier play than black. Black's counterplay is not evident to me at all. Finally, 15 d5. Now you play e5, knight e4, and bishop e3. So often bishop f5 is met by knight d2, and if knight c3, bc. The pawn structure dictates that we have f4, f5 in the long run, and black has to arrange some counterplay here with his 4 pawns against our 3, but it is not easy for him. For example, bishop d7, knight h2, rook c8, f4 will already start. c5, knight f3 back, protect the d4 square, very important. b5, queen d3, getting out of the x-ray, not allowing any b4 businesses. Queen c7 and rook c1. And our play is much more dangerous, as f5 is going to come. The king on g8 is very weak. And black's, although he did set his pawns in motion, he doesn't really have easy ways to proceed. If he goes c4, we can move the queen, I don't know, anywhere we want, let's say to c2. And yeah, he hasn't achieved much, but we are already coming. This covers the whole A5 chapter. Been a fascinating journey. We saw lots of different ideas. If you combine this also with A6, A4, A5 lines, because these are, as I call them, sister systems, then we had seen plenty of different resources in these kind of positions, and I believe this is really important. Having seen all these ideas, now your brain probably needs some time. I would say go to sleep, sleep on these lines for a couple of weeks, and in 2 weeks you'll be a new person, you'll be reborn, and your brain will start seeing all the new patterns in the Italian that it hasn't seen before. You will be calculating lines much better. You will see all sorts of ideas that your opponents will never even come close to be seeing. I believe this journey has also been very useful for myself. Like the number of different versions and different ideas, different patterns I had seen has been incredible. With that, I'd like to conclude the A5 chapter. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.